Hey, welcome into the Sunday side session. This is Mike Schaefer from Husker 24/7. This week joined by 93.7 The Ticket's utility infielder, Nick Sehnert. Does a little bit of everything over there for the ticket. Now he's going to do a little bit for me over here on the Sunday side session. Nick, how we doing?
I'm doing well, Shafe. Thanks for having me on as always.
Yeah, for those watching on YouTube, and we're hoping that the stream holds up today.
Mhm.
Last night's post game podcast stream, I looked like I was in witness protection. Brunt's basically the audio was good, but like it was moving pictures and
Yeah.
not like a real stream. So we scuttled that one. So apologies to the YouTube folks, but we hope this one works. I am in a hotel room in Sioux Falls as I will be covering Nebraska basketball later today. So please enjoy the beautiful scenery behind me here at the Spring Hill Suites. All right, Nick, let's dive into Nebraska's latest loss here, 28-20 on the road to USC.
Mhm.
It's one of those. It's hard because I don't know anyone that thought Nebraska was going to win this game. I don't think there's any predictions that I saw that Nebraska was going to win this game from other media people
Mhm.
or any of the stuff that I saw, or certainly my message board. Um, and yet it's 14-14 at half. They had the lead twice. I think they're up 17-14. They're up 7-0. And they had opportunities throughout this game, both offensively and defensively, to make some plays, to put themselves up, to kind of put USC in a hole. And a recurring theme of this season, really since that one throw from Raiola to Luke Lindenmeyer, is Nebraska
Mhm.
just keeps missing opportunity after opportunity. Even in games where they have a few things go their way, there's more out there that they're not able to get. What's your biggest takeaway from yesterday's loss?
Well, you mentioned it, right? There was like nobody picking Nebraska to win yesterday. However, I wasn't entirely sure why. Like I understand that there was a lot of questions about what Nebraska's offense would look like. I said going into it, Shafe, I was like, all right, you know what? We shouldn't expect a dramatic like change in play calling or decision on what player running where. I was more so watching for is Dana Holgorsen able to get Dylan Raiola into a rhythm, right? Like that's where I was looking at. Like the short or to intermediate passing game, or is that looking a little bit better where it allows Dylan to maybe get into a rhythm earlier on? Also, I'm not entirely sure he's 100%, and so yet it's also one of
Yeah, I
those
don't.
things
I
where
think
it's
that's
like
a resounding
it's
yes. He is hurt. He has been
yeah.
playing
So
hurt for
it's
the last 5 games.
exactly. So I'm like sitting here going like figure out a way to get him into a rhythm early, build the confidence early. And they tried to throw the go route to Jamal Banks right at the start of the game on the first play from scrimmage. That's fine. And I thought honestly they did an okay job. There's something you said there about the missed opportunities. We can complain about the officials all we want. We can complain about, if you're a Nebraska fan, the play calling or so on and so forth, but at some point, you need guys to go make plays. And Matt Rule finally said that 2 weeks ago, right? And like that was really the first time that I think we've heard Matt Rule, who's usually really staunch on his defense of players and his "this is on us as coaches" type of mantra. He kind of shifted it to where it was we need guys to go make plays. And I thought that was really interesting because yesterday was just another indication that they just need guys at some point. They can't rely on officials to make calls. They can't rely on officials to make a pass interference or a defensive holding call. They need guys to go make plays. And I'm not sure who that is on the offensive side of the ball right now.
Yeah, I mean, on offense, it's tough. Where I think it really hurts is yesterday there was a ton of opportunity for Nebraska defensively. I mean,
Hmm.
and I don't want to pick on him, but USC certainly did. Malcolm Hartzog had a tough day yesterday. I mean, had at least
Yeah.
two interception opportunities that should have happened. He basically allowed a touchdown that went right through his hands. That is a huge reversal of that game. If you're able to get off the field, stall them out in the red zone with an interception there.
Hmm.
And, it was that kind of theme throughout. Like you just had guys were sometimes in position to break up a pass and just couldn't. They got out physical, out jumped. Tommy Hill had a horrible 2 play
Yeah.
set down there at the first quarter where basically he doesn't time a jump particularly well, gets mossed, and then the next play, for really one of the first times I think all season, we just saw very little effort to try to get a guy out of bounds and allowed a touchdown for almost no reason, really. And so That was frustrating. And then on top of it, I mean, felt like some of the Nebraska's tackling issues from the Indiana game had recurred again in the second, third levels. Woody Marks is a really good running back. We said that on the hype cast. We were trying to let people know like this was. I mean, I would regard him as probably the best running back Nebraska's faced, certainly after the fact. He had the best performance. He was that good coming in. It was just a question of whether USC would run the ball. Nebraska struggled to get off the field there. And then it's like, even when they do everything right, and James Williams absolutely beats his man on the right side, crushes the quarterback, the ball comes out weird. Of course, it goes off of Javen Wright's face mask. Every other team in America, that's an interception or at least a breakup, and then you're forcing a punt at midfield. Just the way that it goes for Nebraska, it's off the face mask to the receiver, and then he gets to the inch line. So then they run probably the play of the game with the the fake jet sweep into the option on the short side. Woody Marks takes it 34 yards, and the rest is basically history. And so at that point, Nebraska, massive uphill battle. You need the touchdown, but it's not just like they needed the 2-point conversion too. They have to I know we're going to call this a 1-score loss. I was probably a 5% confidence they could score a touchdown.
Yeah.
I was at 1 or 0% confidence they would get a 2-point conversion on top of it too. I mean, that is an area of the field 5 yards and in where they have looked atrocious all year. And so it's just it's a tough spot that they found themselves in. But here's the other thing that stood out to me. I'm getting really confused by the lack of urgency Nebraska has in the fourth quarter when they are trailing. Yesterday, I mean, you're on the defensive side for nearly 8 minutes, and they run a ton of time off the clock. And so that shortens the fourth quarter. You come out on offense, you ran 2 plays on the front side of the 2-minute warning because you ran a Harner Carberg play that then forced you to have to run in Dylan Raiola, and you lose seconds that way. Inexplicably, Matt Rule goes home to Nebraska with a timeout in his pocket, and they lost untold seconds in the middle of the field, picking up first downs and then plotting. I didn't get it. The lack of urgency, and this isn't new. And we saw this with the UCLA game when you're down 2 scores and you're just kind of plodding along. I don't understand why that is. I don't know if they're worried about trying to go with tempo. It doesn't make sense. They do it earlier in the game. And here's the other thing. This was a good 2-minute offense for the first 4 games of the season. What the hell happened to that?
It's so bizarre because I remember talking about it on the show. It was just talking about the lack of urgency and the timeout usage. We can nitpick and everything when they lose by 1 score, sure, but the thought yesterday, I was a little thrown off as well by the time, or you go out there and you're going to punt on 4th and 3, and then you call you obviously call the timeout. You set up that you're going to go for it, and then you just let time run off the clock, and you get the 4th and 8. I understand. Okay, yeah, it maybe allows a little more space on the backside for your punter. I get that piece of it.
But it wasn't. Basically, they were going to run a fake punt, didn't get the look they wanted, so they killed that. They were going to run a play, didn't get the look they wanted, so they gambled twice that they were going to get something and they didn't get it. But it's still just like one of those. You should probably have it in there where you can kill the fake from the sideline
100%.
So then you don't have to use that timeout at all, unless you're actually going to go for it. Because then
my thought is you just admitted and said to the media and everybody that not once on a fake punt, but on an actual designed 4th down play that you wanted to go for it. You felt okay, 4th and 3, and I know Matt Rule said yesterday it was in the middle. If it's 4th and 1, 4th and 2, I'm going to go for it 100%. I just feel at times Nebraska lacks this alpha mentality where and you needed that. You need that time and time again when you're playing a team like a USC who was somehow on top when guess what? They probably didn't play well enough to beat you yesterday. And I just time and time again find ourselves in that spot where you're kind of talking about where there's lack of urgency. You go home with a timeout in your pocket, like you mentioned, and as you go back and kind of assess certain situations, that's one where I go, why not? You just wanted to, number one, go for it with a fake punt. Then you realized, okay, you know what? Let's set up an actual play and go for it. I understand not getting the desired look defensively from the Trojans, But you just basically said, "Oh, we're going to completely just throw that away. Let's just punt the ball away, give the ball back to the Trojans, let our defense go to work." When frankly, you needed a spark. Like Nebraska, just I think they struggle to find sparks. And as you mentioned about that 2-point conversion and the confidence level, like once again, I ask you, Shafe, who would they go to? Like, is Ja'Cory Barney a threat inside the 5? I'm not
No
sure
idea.
he is. And is Jamal Banks reliable enough to be able to get off of press coverage in the inside the 5? I'm not sure he is. And you have all this size, and it's just so frustrating because we came into the season talking about the variety of wide receivers that Nebraska has, because they do. Isaiah Nair is a really good athlete with good size. Jamal Banks kind of does some things that Nair doesn't. And then you have obviously Ja'Cory Barney Jr., who we know the staff is high on. And yet, with the variety of athletic traits that wide receiver room holds, you still struggle to find ways to get them to produce. And that's maybe on the players, maybe on the coaches, but they got to get something figured out soon. And here we are, just 2 games, and I guess there's not a whole lot of time left.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've got 2 games to figure out how to get 1 win, and it's a situation they know very well because they were in the same exact spot last year.
I'm curious on Malcolm Hartzog because you brought him up earlier, because I think a lot with Malcolm, he's listed as 5'9", 180. I'm not sure, Shafe. I mean, we've seen him obviously in person. I'm not sure he's all 5'9".
He
And
might be
I just,
5'7.5".
yeah, and I sit like yesterday, yeah, he probably could have been in a better position, and he should have made the interceptions as they were. I feel like they ask him to be on an island so often, and when as I say this, like, you're asking somebody that maybe is 5'9" to cover guys that are 6'2", 6'3",
Yeah, Deuce Robinson 6'4".
and that is, once again, I look at that and go, all right, John Butler, figure out a way to, whether that's help over the top or whatever it may be, because that is not putting Malcolm in a position to be successful. That's asking him to do something that's probably a little outside of his skill set. And Malcolm Hartzog, he's had a decent year. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster. There's been some really big highs and really low lows. But at the end of the day, like yesterday, good credit to USC, because teams are going to focus on that, as we saw, and Nebraska was unable to make adjustments defensively as well throughout the game.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where it's tough because they like him. He's willing to gamble, and usually when he gambles, he's been successful. I mean, there's a reason he leads your team in interceptions, and yet at the same time, he's not a great fit in a conference that's largely full of big people.
Yeah.
And it's something we've known for a while, and so it's not really new. Nebraska's bet is that their defensive line gets pressure fast enough that Malcolm isn't that much on an
Mm-hmm.
island that he's going to get beat, or you're going to alter the quarterback's throw. But we saw 4 different third downs where they went at 7. They just went at Malcolm Hartzog, and they had success on all of those. And it's a tough deal. I mean, the interesting thing to me is he's probably not even the first guy in the secondary that I would look to replace right now. Like their safety play has been so bad. And I know that Malcolm plays safety at times too, and he was yesterday. But I mean, Deshaun Singleton and Isaac Gifford have been really, really alarmingly disappointing this year.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't like, the whole team has struggled. So I don't need to just individualize where some of these issues are. But these guys aren't in the right spot. They're slow to get to their coverages or to get to their run fits, and it just murders Nebraska in some situations. And whatever Isaac Gifford was in 2023, that's gone. He's not the same player. He doesn't have the same burst. He doesn't have the same ability to finish. I think similar in a very different way. I think he is overthinking everything he's doing. So he's not just reacting and playing like he was in the Minnesota game in 2023, or he was against Wisconsin in 2023. 2 games, wildly different ends of the season last year, but he played really well. Now he just sort of looks like is stuck in mud. Like there's nothing sudden about the back end of that defense. And I think the better teams are able to take advantage of that. The good news for Nebraska, the next 2 teams you play, significantly less likely to take advantage of the issues that USC did today, which is all fine. but Nebraska's offense is less likely to take advantage of what Wisconsin and Iowa give up too. So it's a catch-22. That defense still has to figure out how to make plays to get this team in position to be successful, because I don't believe the offense can put up enough points themselves. Now, one thing, we're jumping around here, but one thing that I thought looked good offensively yesterday, they were able to kind of get in rhythm running the ball. It was nice to see sort of the split between Emmett Johnson and Dante Dowdell, because I think you got two different running backs. And it felt like USC struggled with both. Nebraska was able to get up the field through the middle in a way that they really haven't. A lot of times those guys try to end up bouncing those runs. They were getting to the second, third level on blocks. It was nice to see. And then you had guys make individual plays. I mean, Emmett Johnson had a couple runs there where he probably could have been tackled 7-8 yards short of where he ended up, but he just fought through. I thought he had a really strong game. And then Dante Dowdell continues to be a nice piece for Nebraska. I think the running back situation is what it is, but they got the bulk of what you could get out of it on Saturday. You just need more, unfortunately, from your passing game. And I don't know really what is going to untether that, because they still had issues, on some of the short throws. It still feels like Dylan Raiola isn't seeing the field the way that he wants. And then when you design the beautiful play that they had set up for Jamal Banks, your left tackle gets bull rushed straight back into the line of sight of your quarterback, and maybe that threw that entire play off. There's no other progression for him to go to. It's a dead play at that point. So Nebraska is fighting a battle of it's not good enough, but it also, when things seem like they're going to go in the right direction, the bad luck seems to spike at the wrong time.
Well, and it certainly doesn't help when we assess this offense, and special teams doesn't do them any favors in the punt return game, doing things like fair catching punts at the 4-yard line.
Yeah.
And like those, we haven't even brushed on that yet. But so talking about the running game, I'd be curious, like I am genuinely curious on the outlook or expectation for Nebraska's running game going forward. Not even just in the final 2 games of the year of the regular season, but also beyond. Like, what does this look like in 2025? Do you feel like you can consistently put together a performance like this? And maybe they found something in terms of the balance and the way they want to use the 2 guys, Emmett Johnson and Dante Dowdell yesterday. Maybe they found something that they kind of want to continue to go back to. I'm curious about the outlook for the running back room, because I'm in the boat of, I believe Emmett Johnson is potentially the best running back Nebraska has. I think at times the staff feels the same way. We saw it against UCLA. I keep going back to this point of it, where Dante Dowdell, listed as starter, starts the first quarter and gets into, they give him some carries, get him some touches, but then fourth quarter against UCLA, they have Emmett Johnson in the game in the last possession of the game. And it's just this weird blend of, like, I don't know how they view each guy. I don't know. It's the same song and dance every single season. It feels like, of like, do you need a number one? Can you do this whole like by committee thing? I don't get caught up in the by committee, because I think every team does that to a certain extent. It's just Nebraska, once again, I think they might have found something yesterday, but is it sustainable for this season and beyond? And then also, I think, like, what's the outlook of Nebraska's coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball as well? I mean, there's like that conversation too that at some point we'll have to have, and it hasn't been a great year and a half for Nebraska's running backs. It hasn't been a great year and a half for Nebraska running the football on offense. And so throughout all of that, I just think there's a lot of unanswered questions that I'm really interested to learn more about in these final 2 games of the regular season, when it's the running back room being discussed.
Yeah, you mentioned what it might look like next year. I don't think it's going to look anything like it does right now. I think they're going to overhaul the running game. I think Dana Holgorsen has a vision for what his running game is going to be. I expect him to be Nebraska's offensive coordinator for 2025, and I don't think it'll look like what it is now. The interesting thing is, I think they're usually caught in between, because neither guy is better than the other as a pass catcher. I think what we saw, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Emmett Johnson had some pretty nice blitz pickups yesterday. And so I think in some ways he's in at the end of the game, because if you're not leaking him out of the backfield late, and usually that's what you're doing, he's chipping, or he's there as the protection for the extra blitzer. And he
100%.
did a nice job, I think, at times. And so I think that's why he was the one in there. I think if they had a lead, they'd probably opt for the more body blow strategy of trying to tackle Dante Dowdell. But here's the thing. Nebraska hasn't led in the fourth quarter. I mean, other than for the brief Ohio State moment, they haven't led in the fourth quarter for a while. And you have to go back to the Rutgers game. So it's a deal where I think you're trying to just go with what you have. I think it's going to look dramatically different. I think the pieces are going to end up looking different. You mentioned, whether you have a 1 or you go by committee. You go by committee because you don't have a 1. I mean, if you have a Woody Marks is your guy. You're not you're getting him his 19 carries. When you're Nebraska and you haven't had a good running back really since Divino Zigbo or Dedrick Mills, where you can just load them up and play off of that. You're just trying to make it work and see who catches a spark. And Emmett Johnson was really good in the Coliseum. And Dante Dowdell was pretty good too. And so, if that's the version of your running game, you can work with that. You can absolutely work with that. I just don't believe that you're going to be able to do it and carry that over. I don't think what they did on Saturday just translates to be able to do it against Wisconsin and Iowa. I'd be completely wrong. And for Nebraska's sake, I hope I am absolutely wrong. But I don't look for them to just be able to line it up and run. Those guys had 17 carries for 107 yards, and we're acting like this is, fantastic. But it is relative to what we've seen Nebraska be able to do. So I don't know, maybe it was 19 carries for 107 yards. I don't have the stats right in front of me, but it wasn't, it was a nice average. It was a nice day, and they had some solid chunk runs in there. But we're still a far cry away from having a discussion about a real running game for Nebraska. And so I don't think we see that until 25 at the earliest.
I'm pretty sure Nebraska hasn't had a 100-yard rusher this season, correct?
Nope.
They didn't.
No.
So, okay, I didn't think so. So that's my point will still stand. Nebraska's last game where they had a single guy rush for over 100 yards was last year against Wisconsin. It was Chubba Purdy. Chubba Purdy was your last player, obviously not a running back, was your last player to rush over 100 yards against a team in a single game.
I'm pretty sure whatever game they lost Gabe Irvin in was the last time they had a running back go for over 100 yards. Third game of the season last year. It's whoever they played before Louisiana Tech. It was Heinrich Harburg's first start.
That's right. And then obviously we both can't think of it right now. But I mean that's real indicative of just Nebraska's running game as a program the last couple of seasons, and it's infuriating if you're a Nebraska fan. So I don't know, Schaefer. I think they went out and tried to attack in the portal last year. I mean, you know that better than I do, and I think you're going to need to do that again this year. I just think that you need to find somebody that, easier said than done here, has vision, has the ability to make a guy miss in the backfield, because I'm not sure what the outlook also looks like for the Nebraska offensive line next season. And it's so difficult for anybody, and whether you're in the pass game or the run game, when your offensive line isn't on the same page. And at times yesterday they weren't, because the ball would be snapped and they would get such a late jump, especially even at the guard position right next to the center. Like, it is so difficult to block guys and to run a successful play when your offensive line doesn't even know the play has started yet.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that they need to address and they need to fix, because you do have a Dylan Raiola, but like specifically talking running backs, I just feel like at times they struggle with getting athletes that can make guys miss in the backfield. And as of right now, you need to be able to have the vision to not just run right into a giant pile, but then also the ability to make a move and make a guy miss in the backfield, because a lot of times it's going to be, can I make one guy miss for, where if I don't, it's a loss of 3 yards, but then if I do, I'm able to at least get 4 or 5. And it's just that initial would-be tackler, Nebraska can't make miss 99% of the time, it feels like.
Yeah, they're not breaking a lot of tackles this year. There's no question about that. The run game will be fascinating next year. Like I said, I expect it to look quite a bit different. I don't know what the offensive line will look like. They'll be younger, and in some ways, I think maybe that's going to be better. Just to kind of move on, I think you've maxed out what you are as an offensive line with this group in front of them. I don't mean that as sort of a damning statement. It's just kind of unfortunately, and people hate the saying, but there sort of is what it is when it comes with the offensive line at this point. You scheme around it as best you can. You try to get them into advantageous situations, and then you try to move forward with it. Nick, let's finish up with this game on Saturday. Nebraska plays close, loses. Later that night, Wisconsin takes Oregon to the wire, loses. These two teams, 5-5, we were in the exact same situation a year ago. 2 games before the end of the year, they're both 5-5. Nebraska goes out to Madison. They have the opportunity to win that game. They're up 2 touchdowns early. Wisconsin ties it back. They take the lead. Nebraska comes down. They have a chance to win it with a touchdown late. They settle for a field goal. You want to talk about a lack of urgency? Go watch the final drive of regulation against Wisconsin. And then we all know Nebraska's overtime stats. So I'm asking you right now, 6 days out, how are you feeling about Nebraska's chances against Wisconsin?
Fair. I feel fair. I mean, if to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, somewhere between 4 and 6. I think it'll fluctuate
I
between
think
the
that
day.
number is 5.
Yeah, it is. It is 5. But on some days, I might feel like a 4. On to the next day, 24 hours after, I might feel like a 6. So I guess
A
that
little
does
juiced up
average
to
out.
get into 6,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
I guess that does average out to a 5. Thank you. No, I don't know. I think when we assess this Wisconsin team, when we do our usual, like, oh, let's look at the schedule and let's pick a win here and pick a loss here, and when we do all that at the beginning of the season, this Wisconsin team looks different than what they did, months ago when we did that and had those conversations, especially at the quarterback. They go out and get Tyler Van Dyke. He gets hurt against Bama, and now it's Braden Locke. Braden Locke, correct? I know it's his last name's Locke.
Yeah, Braden Locke.
Yeah, Braden Locke at quarterback. And also running back, they don't have Ches Malusi. Ches Malusi decided to step away from football the first week of October, if I remember correctly. So it looks a little bit different. I think there's pressure on both sides. I think there's pressure on Luke Fickell right now because it has not looked, I think, any sort of what Wisconsin fans and support have expected after he came from Cincinnati. I think Nebraska gets it done. If you ask me how, I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if it's going to be a defense steps up type of game. I would lean that way. I would also be surprised, like if Nebraska is able to score over 24 points again. Like Schaefer, I was looking at this yesterday when I was doing the post game show. Is I looked at like one of my favorite sites, College Football Stats, and Nebraska came in with 100th in the country in scoring offense, and they were under their average yesterday against USC. And if you would have taken, let's say they score 20 points per game on average, that puts them 119th in the country in scoring offense. And 119th, wedged between Michigan State and Colorado State. And it's just like you weren't able to score more than 1 touchdown yesterday offensively. And at some point, you're going to ask your defense to do a lot. But I thought yesterday was a really good indication of there was missed opportunities for the defense, but you get 1 interception, you force a fumble and recover it. And from a special team standpoint, you block a field goal attempt. And yet your offense was still only able to muster 7 points in terms of a touchdown. Like that is unacceptable. Unacceptable. And looking ahead at Wisconsin, maybe the defense gets some turnovers. Maybe they get Nebraska the ball to start, maybe even just outside the red zone. Who knows where? But once again, it goes to is Nebraska's offense able to score the football? You're not going to win many games, if any, when you just only score 7 points offensively in terms of touchdown, 1 touchdown in the game. It's not going to happen.
Couldn't have said it better. Nick, where can the people catch your work throughout the week?
You can follow me on Twitter or X, Nick_Sehnert there. And then, just listen to the show 8 to 10 every single weekday. I also do some stuff on a YouTube, which I appreciate. Schaefer's been on quite one time as well. The Nick Sehnert show on YouTube, so you can subscribe there as well. But Schaefer, it's always a good time chopping it up, man. I wish we could have talked about Nebraska going to a bowl game instead, and hopefully somewhere other than the pinstripe.
Yeah, well, maybe someday we'll talk about Nebraska playing a 13th game, but until that actually happens, it's all just a mirage that's out there. So
yeah,
we'll see how that goes. Everyone, check out everything we got going on at Husker 24/7. Remember, Nebraska plays in Sioux Falls basketball today at noon against St. Mary's. I will be there, so we'll have plenty of live coverage from that as well. Appreciate everyone watching, listening, subscribing, everything we have going on with Husker 24/7. We'll catch you next time.